Hello everyone, it's great to see you all again today. I hope you're having a good day so far. So we finished up the last unit in our last class. So today we're going to move on to something a little different, and it's something that's really exciting. It's definitely something I'm going to enjoy teaching you. So I hope it's something that you'll enjoy learning about. It's something that everyone loves. It's music. So let's start right away and open up our books. So we're going to turn to Unit 3, and that's on page 32. So let's get right started with the first little section here in this unit. So we're going to start with some vocabulary about instruments. So music is made up of a bunch of different instruments. There's pretty much just instruments and singing. So if we didn't have instruments, it would just be people singing, and that might get a little boring, right? So there's a bunch of different type of instruments, and these instruments are used for different types of music. Some are used for more than one type of music. So let's learn some of the more popular ones. So there's one here that you might recognize the name of. It would be from our class on shapes. So does anyone see a name on the right side there that you recognize from our class on shapes? Any words that look familiar to you? Yeah, the word triangle, the one on the bottom of the list there, that is a shape that we learned before. So you might be curious as to how that might be related to music, but it's actually the name of an instrument as well. So can anyone guess what of those pictures might be a picture of a triangle? Yeah, it's the fourth one there. So the fourth one you can see is basically just a piece of metal bent into the shape of a triangle. So they thought they already got the name for the shape, they might as well just call the instrument that as well. So that's a triangle. Basically, it's just a piece of metal, and you hit it with a stick, and it kind of rings like a bell. It's just a weird shaped bell, more or less. Does anyone recognize any of the other instruments, the pictures there? The second one, yeah? What do you think the name of that one is? Yeah, it's a piano. So I'm sure some of you have taken piano lessons before. Um, it's a really popular instrument. It's in classical, it's in rock music, it's in jazz. There's pretty much no type of music that doesn't use a piano. So pianos come in a lot of different styles and different shapes. So you might have seen a grand piano before. That's a big kind of weird shaped black piano. It's kind of the biggest type of piano you can see. So they're used a lot in classical music and stuff. But a piano could also be like an electric keyboard, like you might hear in pop music. So pretty much anything. Technically, it's just the acoustic ones that are called pianos, but a keyboard and a piano are definitely related. So acoustic is a tough word, I know, but we're going to be using it a little more coming up. So try and remember it. Basically, it just means something that isn't electric. All right. Does anyone recognize any of the other instruments? No? Okay. Well, let's start learning some then. So the first picture, can anyone guess what the name is? So it's called drums. So drums are a really important instrument. They come in different styles. These ones are kind of a drum set. So that's the type of drums that would be used in maybe rock music or jazz music. Drums are really important because they give the beat to music. So you need the beat to kind of keep all the other instruments on time. If you didn't have drums, everyone would just start playing at their own speed, and then you wouldn't have music, you'd just have a mess of noises. So drums are super important. They're a little different than some other instruments because you hit them with a stick and they don't make tone. So tone is kind of a different, it's what you make when you play an instrument, but not the drums. So a tone, an example of a tone would be like, just kind of, it's the noise that music makes, and the drums are there to make sure that everyone's tone stays on the same track. So they're a little different. They don't make a tone. They just kind of make a noise. Basically just the noise of you hitting something, right? So the next one we already did, that's a piano. Can anyone guess what the third one is? So this is the one that the word acoustic is coming in handy again for. Anyone guess? Yeah, it's an acoustic guitar. So this is a guitar. It's a specific kind of guitar. There's a bunch of different kinds. Basically, there's an acoustic, there's an electric. So an electric guitar you have to plug in, and it makes a nice heavy sound. It's like in rock music. But an acoustic guitar, it's more soft and relaxed. So you might hear it in like folk music. They're in classical music. They're in sometimes in rock music if it's a quieter song. And then there's also bass guitars, so they make a nice low sound, and they kind of It's an important part of rock music. It's kind of in the background, but if you listen to any rock sound, I'm sure you'll hear some bass guitar in the background. So the fourth word is a triangle. We already did that one. So that one's the easiest to remember because we already know our shapes, right? The fifth and sixth one are a little tougher than the rest. So these ones are kind of similar. Both of these instruments you blow into and you press different buttons to affect the tone. So it'll make a different noise based on which buttons you're pressing. So you might press one button and blow through it and it'll make a nice low sound. And then if you press another button, it'll affect how the air goes through it and it'll make a nice high sound. So basically you press different buttons to make a different tune. So without the buttons you wouldn't be able to play any music, you'd just make one note. So the first one, can anyone know the name of that one? It's a clarinet. So clarinets and the second one, sorry, is a saxophone. So they're both woodwind instruments, which is a family, a musical family, and basically you blow through both of them and press different buttons to affect it, but they make different sounds. So someone playing a clarinet the music would sound different than someone playing a saxophone. And you can kind of tell like the clarinet's black and the saxophone's gold. So there's different ways to tell them apart as well as the name and the sound they make. So although they're related, they're kind of really different in their own way. So next we're going to talk about musical families. So instruments are organized into different types of families. So like the saxophone and the clarinet, they're related. Other instruments as well as related. So a guitar and a violin would be in the same family. And a violin, you've all seen them before, I'm sure. You rest it on your chin here, and you use a bow to play it like that. It's always in classical music, and it's mostly classical, but in some other types of music sometimes as well. So the first family, we're going to have to match up the name for that one. Can anyone guess? It's pretty tough. It's a percussion family. So percussion basically is anything that you hit to make a sound. You hit or you kind of, well, it's mostly hitting, yeah. So a drum would be an example of what a percussion instrument would be. So the percussion instruments are used to keep the other musicians on track, just like the drums are. So the second family, can anyone guess? So it's a type of metal. I don't know if any of you would know the name of the metal. It's on the right side. It's brass. So brass is a type of metal that you use to make different things, but it's really popular for making brass instruments. So usually you can tell a brass instrument because it's shiny. It looks like it's made of brass. And just like the clarinet and saxophone in the woodwind family, you blow into it to make the noise. It's got buttons on it as well, but there's only 3 buttons, usually. So it's a little different. They're kind of related in that you blow through both those different families to make the noise, but there's enough differences that they're their own family. And then the last instrument is the next one is one I've already talked about. I just mentioned it and I talked about it with the saxophone and clarinet. It's a woodwind instrument. So the reason it's called woodwind, the wind comes from the fact that you blow into it, the wind from your mouth. And then the wood comes from the fact that there's a little reed in the mouthpiece. So the part of a wind instrument that you blow into has a piece of wood there, and when you blow on it, it vibrates. So it shakes really fast. And when it does that, it makes noise, and this goes through the rest of the instrument and makes it loud. So it's the wood from the mouthpiece, the reed, and the wind from your mouth blowing through it. So that's the best way to remember it. You can't always tell because it's a little part and you can't see it from far away. But if it's got lots of buttons on it, not just 3, then it's probably a woodwind instrument. So the saxophone and the clarinet are examples of that. And it can be tough because the saxophone is a woodwind instrument, but it looks shiny like a brass instrument, right? So it's sometimes difficult to tell between the two, but usually if there's 3 buttons, it's brass. If there's lots, it's woodwind. And the last family, can anyone guess what that one is? The only word we haven't used yet? Yeah, it's string instruments. So string instruments are instruments that, they are ones that you have strings on. So a guitar would be an example of this. Sometimes the strings are metal, like on a guitar, and sometimes they're made out of nylon. Some guitars use nylon. But basically, that's any instrument that you either kind of hit the string, like in a guitar, you can strum it, or you use a bow, like in a violin. Those are string instruments. So those ones are easy to remember. just basically any instrument that has a string on it is probably a string instrument. So those are some different types of instruments and some different families that they're separated into. So I'm going to hand out a worksheet now so we can practice our instrument names and try and remember them a little better.